Hey guys, welcome to Tamco Tech Thursday. Today's live is going to be on HC7600. So welcome you guys who are going to be logging in here briefly in a minute. And hopefully you guys were getting some of your questions together and some of your thought process on some questions that you might have on 7600. And then we can go over answering some of those. So I see some people joining on here now. So we'll get started. Thank you so far for the candy orders that have come in. So far it's doing pretty good. And so we appreciate that. So hopefully you guys have been getting, some general questions together for the 7600. 7600 is a clear that we have been making for a very long time at Tamco. It's by far not a new clear from us. It's something that we have been manufacturing for a very long time, well over 15 years. It's been one of the staple clears that was very popular from us in the very beginning, something that kind of won over a lot of people and started trusting our products in the very beginning just because of its qualities with speed and gloss for the kind of speed that it has, how nice it cut and buffs, how quickly you could cut and buff, things like that. So we'll discuss that. The name kind of, has notoriety because of, old school DuPont used to have a 7600. It is loosely based off that. It was actually a perfected version of 7600. If any of you guys had used the original DuPont 7600 back in the day, then you would know that it was a fast clear, still dried in about 2 hours, but it was also a very yellow clear. And if you were to do your traditional blends on, whites or silvers or any kind of like a white pearl, that really yellow cast that clear had always would throw those off. So from day one of using this clear, I always would have a lot of people, the first thing they would ever mention before we made a big deal of clarity and how much clarity our clears had, before we made a big deal out of that, everybody always complained about the lack of clarity in a lot of the DuPont clears, especially the 7600. So that was one difference right off the bat versus, the fact that our version is higher solids than their version was and things like that. But it was always a basically replacement to people used to using the DuPont 7600 back in the day, and ours had a better price point and better clarity and better solids and, didn't have some of the same issues. So now that people are watching, there's, a good amount of people who are watching now, we'll go over it. So the product that we're going over, the product that we're actually going to, talk about now is going to be the 7600, what I was talking about before. So the 7600 is our 2-hour air dry clear. What does that mean? So air dry means that it's going to dry above 70 degrees in 2 hours on its own. No need for forced heat, no need for anything like that. As long as the air temperature is of above 70, it will actually cure the way that it needs to in a period of time of 2 hours or so, where you would be able to cut and buff it and or deliver the vehicle right away in the same day within a few hours. So if you're in the collision industry, for instance, this is something that is, a huge help for being able to keep the hours that you need to do in the production up. So if you're doing collision work and, you have a customer who comes in and they need to have something delivered that day, this is the clear that can do that at a very cost-effective price point. So for something that dries in 2 hours where you can cut and buff it, and in many cases you don't always have to, you actually can get away with the way it looks as is and deliver it as is for $119.95 a kit, which is a very, very good price point for the particular clear that it is. It's perfect clarity to it. It has no issues with clarity. It's a crystal clear clarity like we're known for at Tamco. Very user-friendly. So probably one of the biggest compliments that I receive on 7600 is its user-friendliness. It is a clear that you can just kind of get the hang of. It's not something that's really tricky to pick up. It's a, user-friendly solids content. The mix ratio is easy, things like that, but it's just not a difficult clear to get the hang of. If you're doing, motorcycle parts or anything like that, this is a staple clear. It's something that you definitely want to have in your arsenal to be able to get some of these jobs done. So the question was, is it $119.95? It's $119.95 for a kit. So that's the clear plus the hardener. It's a 4-to-1. So you're going to get 5 usable quarts in that price. No need to reduce 7600. I know very few people who will ever add any kind of reduction to it. If you want to, you could do about a 5% reduction with one of our reducers, but there really is no need for it. It sprays very, very good, very user-friendly at the standard 4-to-1 mix ratio. So It has various different uses. One of the nice benefits of our clears when it comes to everything we make but one is that this is also a direct metal clear. So if you're looking for something that's direct metal, that's fast, that has a good gloss, that's user friendly, 7600 is going to fit the bill. It's definitely going to do that. So this is a clear that if you're a collision shop, you want in your shop. It's something that you would utilize with 4100 in my opinion, or now the 4105 that we've just released. It's definitely something you want in your arsenal for doing that. When you're a collision shop, you have a balance of clears. You're never really just going to use one clear, because depending on what you're doing for the day, depending on the time frame of when you have to, get the job done, you need a clear that can either be fast, or a clear you might want to bake, or a clear that, can sit overnight until you come back the next day. 7600 is going to be the clear that's going to save your ass in a lot of cases for the price, for what it's capable of doing, and getting the job done and getting the customer happy. Now, in a lot of cases, I see a person mention the question here, and I'll touch on this right now. In a lot of cases, everybody has this mentality that speed clears right off the bat, or speed clears on average, do not last as long. Meaning they lose their gloss faster, they die out faster. It's the number one thing I've always been told is, does your speed clear not last as many years? Is the UV different? Does it not last as good? Is the gloss to it not as good? It has nothing, speed has nothing to do with durability. It has nothing to do with the quality. The speed has nothing to do with the fact of how long it's going to last, anything like that. Now, the speed can make you sacrifice shine to a degree. It really does depend. So in some cases, you'll see 7600 function perfectly, meaning you'll never see that it has a loss of gloss depending on the conditions, how you applied it. Did you over apply it? Did you overcoat it? Did you not flash it properly? Did you not have good enough airflow? Did you have too much airflow? Different things can make any clear have dieback issues. Now, the faster you accelerate something, the more you have a possible issue of the clear losing its gloss. That's just chemistry. When you accelerate something, that can happen. Now, the nice thing about 9500, which is our 30-minute speed clear that we have, is that clear does not sacrifice gloss whenever you use it with as fast as it is. So it dries in 30 minutes, but the technology in that resin, it's a reason it costs more money than any of our other clears, the technology in the resin allows it to dry and to cure as quickly as it does without making you sacrifice the gloss level. That's a huge thing. You're paying for that technology when you're buying 9500. That's why it costs more money. 7600, on the other hand, is saving you $100 over using 9500. So if you're looking for a more cost-effective clear, which isn't that much longer of a time frame, meaning the 9500 is a 30-minute clear, 7600 is a 2-hour clear, you are saving $100. So in a lot of cases, you're going to justify saving $100. So if 9500 is not always the option for you, for price point, for various different reasons, 7600 is going to be that option. It's going to be the one that you want to go with. It's various different uses for it. So I was kind of trying to get my thought together on how I want to start explaining it. So I went over the fact that it's a direct metal clear, meaning it can go direct to metal. So if there's anything that you're wanting to do where you want to have direct metal properties, this clear offers you that in a speed ability. Whenever it comes to using it in a way that would be unique, that a lot of people don't really know about or don't really talk about, it's talked about in our group, and you'll see it talked about in the Tamco group by guys who do this. There are times when you're doing a repair that you want to keep the repair small, meaning you don't want to have to use primer to do a repair on certain small things. Motorcycle tanks, different pieces like that would be something that comes to mind. But this works on all kinds of projects, no matter what it is. It could be a hood, it could be a fender, it could be anything where you want to be able to do something and you want to be able to have a repair that is very small. So what does that mean? Well, whenever you do primer and then you come back and you have to do the body work and everything with primer, you automatically take a small repair area and you make it larger. That's just how it is when you're using primer. It makes it messier. It makes the primer go out to a larger area. You could overspray with primer. No matter what, it's going to always make the repair larger. When you want to have a repair done with direct metal properties and just be able to be a clear primer is the best way to explain it, 7600 is ideal for that. Could you use our other clears to do the same thing? You could, but the speed here is what matters. So when you use this product and you were to do a repair and be able to keep it small with clear, you would treat the clear just like your primer. Now remember, you're not going to get the same kind of build that you get out of primer. So if build is something that you really need, you might do a couple extra coats, or you might just stick with primer. But if build is not really what you need, but you want to keep the repair small, lock it down, and then be able to continue on, 7600 works beautifully for this. Later on, after the live is over, I can go back and tag some of the posts where they've been talked about, where Pat Dry has talked about it and Matt has talked about it, where you can use these things, this particular clear, in this fashion to keep your repair smaller. It keeps it clean, it keeps it smaller, it gets it done faster. It eliminates the primer step. It eliminates steps in that aspect. Yes, you're still using clear as a primer, but it's doing it better. It's doing it in a cleaner, smaller area. So always remember that you can utilize 7600 in that way, which may not be considered the most common thing that you might think of when it comes to clears, but you actually can do that with this clear, and it works very, very efficiently. You can be sanding on it in 2 hours and moving on then that way. Now, people would ask, can you bake 7600? You can. You can bake 7600 for 20 minutes at 140 and be done. The nice thing though about 7600, depending on, not everybody bakes, not everybody has a booth, not everybody has this ability. So if you do bake and you want to be able to do production in and out, and you want to, have a baking booth to be able to do that, you can bake this clear without having any issues. You won't have issues having baked it. Some clears don't like it. Some clears do like it. This clear is okay with you baking it. So 20 minutes at 140, you're done. After cool down, cut and buff, deliver. If you don't want to have to do that, is the nice feature of this clear. It's kind of why it's called air dry. People will say, what's the air dry? Air dry means it's 2 hours at air temperature at 70 degrees in the air. It dries, it cures, it does what it needs to get the job delivered. So remember that you could do either option, bake or non-bake. You can also you can use 7600 on a lot of different things. So it's something that's not just meant for, like doing a car, but you could use it on anything. So if you're wanting to, let's go to the custom aspect actually right now of 7600. So a nice thing with 7600 is a lot of guys who do custom work, and a lot of guys in this group do custom work, they layer their clears. Meaning depending on what they're doing, they want to lock down the work that they're doing, the graphics they're doing, flake, anything. They want to lock it down. You don't want to lock things down with high solids clears because you want to make sure that you keep your mill build down. Dennis D. Dog Price in the group talks about this a lot. When you're doing a lot of different stacking of graphics and patterns and designs and multi-layered of products, you want to keep your mill build down. You guys exceed in the custom industry mill builds that the automotive industry would never want to see you use. And actually they would never warranty to a degree what you guys do for that aspect because you have so much mill build there. So if you were to use a clear that's not as high solids and not as expensive like 7600, you would be able to layer your work that way. Now, it's never meant for doing it all over. You're never meant to take this and say, okay, well, I have this, Impala that I've done. I have all this pattern work on it. I'm going to lock this whole car down in 7600 and then be able to move on. No. It's never meant for that. You would have to do your pieces in sections. You would have to split it up, or you would have to go with a different clear. You could use 4100 to lock all your work down. It would just have an overnight dry. But if you're working on smaller things, 7600 is ideal for that. People will say to me, how many panels can you get done at one time using 7600? Can you paint a whole car? No, you never can. And I've had guys over the course of well over 15 years now try to challenge me to the fact that they say you can paint an entire car. And then, some will get around with a caveat of saying, well, I painted the entire car in pieces. If you want to paint the entire car in pieces and you want to use a 2-hour clear, by all means, you can do that with 7600. You could do the entire car in complete sections or 2 pieces at a time and utilize this clear and get the job done. But you're never going to be able to spray an entire car with 7600, no matter what temperature it is, and get it done. I had a guy do a Mitsubishi Eclipse one time. He told me he could do it. He was going to do it. He sprayed fast. And by the time he got around that car, he had no wet edge. It was already starting to attack itself, and it went into a recoat window. So I want to talk about that part too. When you talk about going into a recoat window, with speed clears, with fast clears, meaning when they are going to go into the cure window, you have to take into consideration that a fast clear is going to go into that window sooner. It means that your time frame of your flash time and your recoat time diminishes, severely diminishes. Because 7600 is a 2-hour clear, you're out of your flash time in about 8 minutes. Meaning if you're flashing this clear longer than 8 minutes, you're going to start having problems. I have some people who they say, oh, well, it's colder. I can flash it 10 to 15 minutes, even as much as 15 minutes. That's not true, and I'll tell you why. You might be able to do it. You might be able to come back with your second coat. It may not recoat on you, and if it's cold, it won't recoat on you, but it will die back on you. So if you take clears that do not need a longer flash time, meaning they do not do well with a longer flash time, you will get cause for dieback. So the guy was using 7600 that I talked to recently, and every time he was using it, it was like his second time doing it, I believe, he kept having dieback. And when I questioned what he was doing, what was his airflow, he's a normal Tamco user. He uses on a regular basis, never has dieback issues, but he was treating it just like 4100 or 2104. He was flashing it that long, not realizing that it's a fast clear and it needs a shorter flash time. So I told him to go back on his next job, which I haven't heard back yet, and to cut his flash time way down. 7600 never needs more than an 8-minute flash time. It just really doesn't. It functions at about an 8-minute flash time, 7 to 8 minute flash time, and then you can come back with your second coat. It's never really going to be a back-to-back clear. 9500 can do that. 7600 is not meant for that. It's not meant to be back-to-back. It's meant to have that 5 to 8 minute flash depending on your temperatures. Take into consideration that flash times vary on climate. They flash on temperature. So if you're in an area where it's warmer, your flash time on 7600 is going to be shorter. So never, like I always tell you guys, do not take the time frames that you see and think that they are one size fits all. They never are. Your climate, your areas, your temperature of the day, your humidity, all of those things factor into how long your flash time should be. If you're sitting in South Florida and it's 90 degrees outside and you're using 7600, you're probably going to be at a 3 to 5 minute flash time. You're never going to push it longer than that. If you're sitting in Connecticut and it's 71 degrees outside, you're going to be able to flash it as long as 8 minutes. You're going to need to, because it's not going to be kicking off as fast. Now, if you were to take 7600 with the speed that it is, and you were to say wait a 20-minute flash in, say, 80 degrees weather or 85 degree weather, it's not going to react well. What's going to happen? Just as like just a tech for you to understand. It's going to, the first coat's gonna be fine, obviously. You come back 20 minutes later at 85 degrees, you put your second coat on, it's going to immediately wrinkle on you. And I don't know of any situation in which it's not going to. It is going to immediately wrinkle on you. Because what's happening is the temperature outside is already helping a fast clear kick in to its faster flash, faster cure already. So whenever you have temperature that high, you cannot flash it that long. Now, when I say to recoat, it means that when you come back with the second coat, all of the solvents in the second coat, which is already starting to go through its cure stage, is going to attack it, literally wrinkle it. Depending on how heavy you spray it, depending on how many coats you've done, is going to depend on how bad the wrinkle is going to be. So the wrinkle could just be as mild as just the waviness of wrinkling that you see happening clear, to going all the way past the base coat, to going all the way into the primer and thereon. It depends on how much you do it. So I have some guys, well, they see it happens and they're like, okay, well, I'll fix it. I'll flash it again and I'll hammer it on and I'll fix it. And then it just gets worse. There is no fixing it when you get to that stage. That's one of the negatives of a speed clear. Watch your flash times, do not exceed them, and you'll never have a recoat window. One of the main issues I've always found with 7600 that people have is really not following basic instructions and doing it and treating it like every other clear that's a regular not air dry, but a regular 12-hour clear, and exceeding the time frames of recoat and then having the issue. It's always textbook recoat issues. You cannot do that. It will always attack itself. It will never not attack itself. It's a speed clear. That's what's going to happen. That's just chemistry. So as long as you follow those guidelines, you will never have an issue doing that. So you can use it like we had talked about on all kinds of things. It can be used. I had a guy who was telling me earlier, he does tech for us. He believes in what he does when he's doing these tumblers or these cups. He likes using 7600 better. And now I know all of you guys are basically diehard on 9500, but he feels like for what he does, that clear actually buries for him better and offers that durability factor, like a very good durability factor with $100 savings. Now, I'm not telling you to stop using 9500. I think it's personally exceptional for doing it. And I think for a lot of you guys who are doing this in your garage setups and things like that, the speed is what comes into play with 9500, and I wouldn't want to see you lose that. But if you're looking for a cost-effective option and 9500 is too expensive for you for what you're doing, and you want an option on these tumblers or skate decks or any of the small things that you're doing custom paint on, and you want something that's going to have durability to it, have a good gloss to it, have a very easy cut and buff to it, that's going to be 7600. So I keep mentioning 9500 because it's the closest clear in speed relation to it. So a lot of people are going to equate speed clears together. So 9500 and 7600 are going to go together for those reasons because they're both just speed clears. You have to consider the $100 price difference that I keep mentioning. So there's going to be times where you might really, really want to use 9500. It might be the best clear suited for the job, but you don't have the money for it based on what you're paying, what your customer's paying you, time frame into the job, things like that. And you may never be able to, just kind of, decide to use 9500 for that reason. So 7600 is going to be the next best option. It's going to be the one that you want to pull for, in your arsenal to get the job done at a lesser cost, but still give you that killer durability and that mill build and the gloss and everything that you're looking for. Nice feature of 7600 is no different than the rest of our clears. It cut and buffs very, very nicely. It's something that you can do, like we've all talked about here, in 2 hours. Literally 2 hours at above 70 degrees after cool down. If you decide to bake it, you can be cutting and buffing and delivering this clear. It has a very, very good gloss. Something that you need to realize when it comes to our clears, no matter if it's a speed clear or not, when you're done cutting and buffing our clears, what you see is what you get. Meaning what you see is what you get in the end. That clear will look like that for the lifespan of its clear after that time frame. So after you've cut and buffed it, it's going to look like that for the remainder of its life. Some of these clears that are fast, when you cut and buff them, they actually will shrink on you, and then they will lose that gloss, and they will no longer have that gloss even a year down the road, 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road. This is not a short-term clear. It is a long-term clear, meaning you can expect to be getting well more than 5 years out of these clears. You could be getting 8 years or more out of this clear. The 7600 is no reason it's not going to be 8 to 10 plus years in the sun every single day. The more you take care of it, the more it's not out of the sun, things like that, where you actually treat it well and take care of it, it's going to make or break how long it's going to last. Are the solids content in 7600 or 9500 higher? 7600 is a little bit lower than 9500. It's a very minimal difference. It's like a little bit less than 5% difference. So when it comes down to it, you're really not going to notice a huge difference. But 7600, the only way I can kind of explain it is when you're going to use it, it's deceivingly high solids. So you kind of feel like maybe it's not super high solids, but it is. It'll bury your work very well. I have a lot of guys that are able to really bury graphics and pinstriping and flake and all kinds of things with 7600 perfectly, no issues whatsoever, and be able to then do a final in a different clear. So a lot of you aren't going to want to necessarily final in 7600 for doing your custom work, but you're going to want to final in, say, a 2104 or like even like a 2021. This is going to let you do that. It's going to allow you to stack your layers and have them cure out faster because it's not a slow curing clear. So, you'll be able to get on it quicker. So a lot of the industry, no matter what you're doing, we're working with a place in Florida right now that does wood. And they always they're switching over completely to Tamco. We just got them. And they always used 2 different clears prior to what they were doing. They would use a cheaper clear, like the sacrificial clear for the bottom, fill in the wood, fill in everything they needed to do, let it just kind of like do its thing, dry, cut it down, and then come back and apply the more expensive top coat on top because they didn't want to waste the top coat for the bottom, which costs a lot more money when you don't need to. So that's no different than like using 7600 for that aspect. Obviously, 7600 costs less than 2104. So 7600 would be really good being used to bury a lot of your work and then final in a 2104, even like a 9500, depending on what you want to do. Now 7600 looks killer. It's a very good looking clear after it's been cut and buffed. So it not even necessarily cut and buffed, depending on your conditions, how you're able to spray it, how well you know how to manhandle 7600, you can have an off-the-gun gloss that you don't lose, that you keep the entire time with very, very minimal dieback at any period of time. Now, can you have dieback with this clear? Of course. You can have dieback with everybody's clear. And nobody is ever going to be able to offer you a foolproof, no dieback clear. It doesn't exist. That has a lot to do with your conditions, has a lot to do with flash times, technique, distance, airflow. I mean, there's so many factors, what reducer you're using, did you catalyze your base coat? All of those factors can actually make or break whether or not a clear is going to die back on you or not die back on you. You're never going to have a foolproof clear that's never going to run into that issue. In most cases, you can alleviate that issue on a dieback issue when it comes to a speed clear by very specific things that you do or that you don't do, things like that. So if you do those kinds of things, you can curtail your dieback issues in many cases. I'm flipping back through because I've been trying to see if there was questions. I didn't really see any, so let me just kind of go back here again. Can you go with 7600 to layer and then go over 21? So I discussed that part. So far, I don't see anything else. It is 9:27. I don't like to go, really, really super long on them past 30 or so minutes. So do you guys have any specific questions that I haven't really touched on right now when it comes to 7600? I did a giveaway earlier. 10 different new users who have never used Tamco, period, won this clear. So if you're one of the guys watching this, girls or guys who's watching this, and you have some questions, right now would be the time to ask it on the 7600. It's a really, really good bang for your buck. So if you want to know how many, let me touch back on, how large of a job you can do or how many pieces. I recommend doing like the front end of a car, and that basically being where you stop. So 2 panels at a time is ideal, but you can get away, depending on your temperatures, with doing, say, like the whole front end of a car into the fenders, doing the hood, and blending it into where you need to blend it into on a repair. I would never try to push it past that in one segment. You're never going to keep a wet edge. It's never going to work the way you want it to. But if you, do a bumper and a fender at the same time, or, 2 bumpers or a hood, anything like that, 7600 is going to be ideal for those kinds of things. Absolutely ideal for it. No really reason to go over 2 coats in a lot of cases for the people who are using this in the collision aspect. In a lot of cases, if you're going to push past 2 coats, you may run into a more issue with dieback, or losing a little bit more gloss, or forcing it to die back on you when it would normally not, just because you're putting more material there. 2 coats is going to give you what you need. In a lot of cases, when it comes to collision, they're not going to cut and buff. They may denib and polish, and that's it. So a lot of guys in the collision industry are going to try to alleviate as much cutting and buffing as possible. In a lot of cases, many, many people I've talked to that are doing this for the quick in and out jobs are never even cutting and buffing it to begin with. So you really want to have the best end result that you possibly can have, the best end look. That's going to be 2 coats, following proper flash times, not exceeding your flash times, staying within the window of 5 to 8 minutes, and basically sticking with that. And if you stick with those areas and you do those kinds of things, you're going to have the results and the looks that you're going for without having to cut and buff it in the end, and doing that in and out that you're looking for in the collision aspect. So it's really a clear that is utilized well in the collision industry, but also that can be used in the custom industry, or really anything. It has its purpose everywhere in anything that you're possibly doing in automotive, whether it's cups, whether it's bumpers, whether it's, doing the small repairs on primer spots like we talked about. So there's a lot of features that this clear offers you, especially for the money, especially for the ability. Like I remember back in the day, we had a guy that worked for us when we were a jobber store in selling Tamco and shipping nationwide, and we were in Norfolk. He painted a job, and I believe it was in less than 30 minutes it got rained on, and it immediately got rained on. And he thought for sure that the clear being what it was, that even though it was a fast clear, because remember it's a 2-hour clear, so it's not cured yet, but it got rained on. And it never left one water imprint on the job. It was enough warmth outside. It was like an 80-some degree day. It was in the summer. There was enough temperature that when it even got rained on in 30 minutes, it didn't do anything to the job. And that in itself actually kind of sold him, because he was used to using a lot of other people's products and didn't quite know how this one would function. And it's something that I've kind of always remembered as one of the very first thoughts I have on when we first started selling this clear. Because even that impressed me with it, that, it could get rained on being a 2-hour clear in 30 minutes and not have water spots, and actually be able to stand up to that. So it's certain specific things like that. And when you're in the collision industry, sometimes you have to kick something out of the booth, depending on the size of your shop. You might have to kick it outside. It may unexpectedly rain on you, and you're not expecting it. And, that could screw up some things. So knowing that you have a little bit more peace of mind in that is kind of a nice feature as well. So I still haven't seen any other questions. You may have covered it, but it was too late. Is it easy to spray? Yes, it's actually a very user-friendly clear. That's one of the nice features of 7600. 7600 is basically 4100 fast. So it's 4100 made fast, meaning it's the exact same thing, just fast. It works really, really well in all kinds of aspects for that reason. So that's why I recommend 4100 and 7600 being the arsenal in a collision aspect, because it's the 1-2 punch you need to get certain jobs done. Certain jobs are never going to need a speed clear. Certain jobs are. So depending on what you're doing, you're going to want to go curtail yourself between both of those. Would 7600 work good for door jams if I wanted to do them first and then use a different clear for an all over on a complete truck? Yes, you could do that. But I'm going to go a step further. I think 7600 is not a door jam clear. Why do I say that? I feel like it's better than that. I feel like most people have in their mind that they want to use a more inexpensive, fast clear for cutting in and doing jams and things like that. I really feel like that's where 1000 comes in, which our 1000 clear is $80 a kit. It's a 4-to-1, 35% solids. I would be cutting in with that clear. I still think that the 1000 is an excellent clear for doing all kinds of things. It's not a cheap clear by any means, but best bang for your buck for cutting in my opinion, would be 1000. 1000 is basically the lower solids version of 7600, which means that it's still a 2-hour clear, but it's $80 and it would cut in my opinion, much better for the money than 7600 would. I feel like 7600 is a little bit better for that, but that's your choice. You can completely cut in with 7600 if you choose to, and I would use 4100 as the all over clear, or depending on when you're going to do it, even maybe the 4105, depending on the temperatures, because it's going to be a little bit slower flash. But in my opinion, for what you asked, what the 1000 clear is the better option for that. So I think I'm going to get ready to wrap some of this up. I think I've covered everything that I can kind of think that you could discuss about 7600 in a live tech frame. I kind of think it's enough bulletin points to make you comfortable using 7600, to know when to grab it, to when not to grab it, to know what to do with it, to know, what not to do with it. Those basic things that I gave you there should really give you a good understanding and a good feel for it. If you haven't used it, I highly do recommend it. Like I said in the beginning, speed clears have a bad rap in a lot of cases. Everybody thinks that speed clears are going to shrink and die back on you on a regular basis, and that they're not good to use for that aspect, or they're not going to last as long, or they lack UV or things like that. These are all things that I have heard over the time frame of selling it, and they're not. That's just not true. 7600 is a suitable replacement in every option where a speed clear is relevant, and it's going to get the job done well, and it's going to get the job done in an inexpensive way. Now, before I go, I do want to say this. People will ask, what clears on the market are similar to, say, a 7600? On the market today, I really only come up with one specific clear that I know is a complete killer to another product. If you're used to using DC 3000 from PPG, it is very similar idea of what our 7600 is in theory, but the 3000 cut and buffs horribly. It shrinks bad. It's a complaint that many people have. It shrinks bad, and it does not cut and buff nice. This clear 7600 will replace a 3000 user every single day, all day long, for a lot less money, because the 3000 clear from PPG is at least $450 a kit for most people with the hardener, 7600 being $119.95. So if price alone isn't going to sell you, it's going to be the fact that it cut and buffs nicer than 3000, and it has a better gloss off the gun than 3000, and it doesn't have the shrinkage issues that 3000 has. So if anybody in the group right now watching this is used to using the 3000, and again, I mentioned that clear because I can't really think of another clear that 7600 is similar to, and I know 100% it is a killer to everybody using a 3000. If you're using that right now in your collision shop or in anything that you're doing, and you're kind of happy with it, you're going to be blown away by using 7600 for a fraction of that cost. I mean, hell, you could buy almost, a case worth of this clear for what you're spending basically for one kit of PPG. If that in itself doesn't sell you, I don't know what will. So anyways, I appreciate you guys watching the live. I think that basically covers everything that I had to talk about. It's a little bit over 30 minutes, and that basically is kind of like where I like to keep them on Thursday, just so that you're not overwhelmed with information. Again, if you ever have questions, feel free to ask them in the group. We're always here to help. Thank you for helping boost us over 10,000. We have over 10,000 members in the group now, and it grows every single day from here, tons more people get added every single day, and it grows from there. So if there's, people that that you think would benefit from learning for what Tamco can do for them or how it can save money, please keep adding them like you do. It does help. We have a lot of new users. We have a lot of different people. I'm going to keep doing the giveaways like we do to help boost getting new users. Hopefully there's going to be 10 new people who start using 7600 after today, because basically once you try Tamco, you continue to use Tamco. So again, thanks for watching it. I hope some of you guys pull the trigger tonight and get some 7600. It's not an expensive option to do, $119.95 plus shipping, and you can have something that is going to get the job done well, and not cost you a lot of money. I appreciate it, you guys. Have a good night. We appreciate all the support, and stay tuned till next Thursday when we do the next Tamco Thursday. Okay, thanks guys.